Okay, let's talk about something that is just so critical for modern medicine. How do we actually teach social determinants of health in a busy, a real-world clinical setting?
As clinicians, we all know that what happens in the exam room, well, it's only a tiny part of the picture, but it's so easy to forget just how tiny. I mean, look at this. Healthcare itself, it only accounts for about 20% of a person's health outcomes. The huge majority, the other 80%, that's all socioeconomic factors, behaviors, and where someone lives.
In fact, when you really dig into the studies, it's a staggering number. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of a person's health is determined by these factors outside of the clinic walls. Stuff like economic stability, education, the community they live in. This isn't just a piece of the puzzle, it's pretty much the whole puzzle. So that leads to the big question for all of us who teach, right? When you've got maybe minutes, not hours, with a learner, how do you possibly move beyond just the biology and the medicine and make these crucial social determinants a real core part of their education? Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with that challenge, then we'll dive right into two super practical frameworks, the 5 micro skills and lanes. After that, we'll talk about how to navigate these conversations and, really importantly, how to create the right vibe for your learners. And here's the good news. You do not have to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to look at two excellent, purpose-built frameworks designed specifically to help you weave SDOH teaching right into your day, even when it's crazy busy. And here they are, the 5 micro skills and the lanes mnemonic. The easiest way to think about them is like two different paths that get you to the exact same goal. The 5 micro skills, that's your tool for a more structured debrief after you've seen a patient. Lanes, on the other hand, is a super quick, memorable guide for teaching right there in the moment. All right, let's break down our first tool, the 5 micro skills. This is really your go-to model for a structured, post-encounter debrief that helps wire this way of thinking about social determinants of health right into your learner's clinical reasoning. Step 1 is so simple, but wow is it powerful. It's called tell and commit. You just ask the learner to tell you about the patient, but you add a really specific prompt. What social circumstance has affected their health? That one question immediately frames the entire conversation and gets them to commit to thinking beyond just the chief complaint. Next up, you probe for their process, and then you provide a path forward. You ask them, okay, so what questions did you actually ask to figure that out? And then you immediately pivot to action by asking, so what can we do to help? This is huge because it connects what they observed directly to what we can do about it. Then it's time to teach. Find one specific high-yield teaching point. You could acknowledge a factor, like their insurance status. Or you could empathize, asking, how do you think the patient feels about this? And then you activate a plan, like getting a social worker involved. It's about making it concrete. And now you reinforce the main lesson. This step is all about cementing the idea that these social factors, they aren't some afterthought or an optional add-on. No, they are the starting point for building a treatment plan that's actually going to work for this person. And finally, you fill in the gaps. You nudge the learner to think even bigger. Okay, so we've talked about this, but what about housing, or food, or transportation? This really pushes them to see the whole person, to develop a really comprehensive view of their life and their needs. Okay, so that was the micro skills. Now let's look at the lanes mnemonic. If the first framework is for the debrief, lanes is your go-to tool for that quick, teachable moment in the hallway, guiding a conversation with both the learner and even the patient. Lanes basically gives you a roadmap for the conversation. L is for link the social need to the health issue. A is for assess what the patient already understands. N for normalize the issue so they don't feel ashamed or alone. E is for educate them on the connection. And S is for share resources. It's a whole compassionate conversation in 5 simple letters. So we've got these 2 fantastic tools, but tools are only as good as the environment you use them in. To make these frameworks really work, they have to exist inside a supportive learning environment. The how of our teaching is just as important as the what.
And the absolute foundation of that environment, it's something called psychological safety. It's basically this core belief that a learner can speak up, they can ask questions, they can voice concerns, they can even make mistakes, and they know they won't be humiliated or punished for it. Honestly, it is the secret sauce for real, deep learning.
So how do you build that? Well, it comes down to really simple, intentional actions. Proactively asking, hey, how are you doing? Listening to understand, not just jumping in to solve their problem. Explicitly naming it inequities to show this is a safe space for those tough talks. And yeah, even sharing your own struggles to show you're human too.
And really, that's the whole point. When you take a practical framework, like the 5 microskills or lanes, and you combine it with that foundation of psychological safety, that is when the magic happens. Every single patient encounter suddenly becomes this rich, powerful, and truly effective learning opportunity.
So as you go into your next clinic session, I want to leave you with this thought. What's just one social question you'll ask, or maybe one step you'll take from these frameworks to bring this vital conversation to life for your very next learner?